Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Less than 48 hours after Iran's surgical strikes, Pakistan has retaliated. They've attacked Baloch targets deep inside Iran. Is this the making of another war? What will it mean for India and the region? And how is the world reacting to it? Tonight, we'll discuss all this and more. On the high seas, meanwhile, ships continue to be attacked. An Indian warship rescued one of them. As America struck the Houthis for the fourth time in a week, will this make a bad situation worse? In Davos, China is trying a charm offensive, with the premier wooing global business and a 140-member team in tow. We'll tell you why it's not working. In Bangladesh, the opposition is trying a new tactic, and India out-campaigned to rally radicals. In the UK, Rishi Sunak has passed his first Rwanda test, but there are more to go. In Singapore, a minister resigns over a corruption scandal. We'll tell you why it's such a big deal. A special report on India's aviation space, the good, the bad and the ugly. There's a new cancer drug. Is it the miracle the world has been waiting for? Why is Gen Z getting Botox? And what are Sephora kids? Also the story of extreme weather, freezing eggs and melting glaciers. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Israel's president calls Iran an empire of evil, says a strong coalition is needed to counter it. President Isaac Herzog also ruled out peace talks with Palestinians right now. He was speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Japan will buy 400 long-range Tomahawk missiles from the US. Tokyo has been ramping up its military capacity. It faces a nuclear-armed North Korea and growing Chinese military clout. By 2027, Japan plans to double its defense spending. Somalia rules out mediation with Ethiopia, says it must first cancel the deal with Somaliland. On 1st January, Ethiopia signed an agreement with the breakaway region. The deal allows landlocked Ethiopia access to the sea. The UN slams Sri Lanka's anti-narcotics drive. More than 40,000 people have been arrested in this controversial plan. The United Nations says suspects are being arbitrarily held, strip-searched and tortured in custody, but the government has dismissed the claims. A US court bars the import of Apple watches. These watches, capable of reading blood oxygen levels, are caught in a patent feud. The legal fight could go on for a year. Apple says it will remove the feature from the models sold in the US. America is one of its biggest markets. And Arnold Schwarzenegger held at the Munich airport. The actor and former California governor had failed to declare his luxury watch. Schwarzenegger was later released. What happens when you attack a nuclear power? Well, Iran tried to find out. They fired missiles into Pakistan on Tuesday. Less than 48 hours later, the response has come. Pakistan has hit back. They used a number of weapons to strike Iran: killer drones, rockets, loitering munitions, and standoff weapons. The operation is being called Marg Bar Sarmachar, meaning death to guerrilla fighters. This place was the target, a village near the Iranian city of Saravan. It's located in the Sistan Balochistan province, distance from the border, possibly less than 100 kilometers. Now, Pakistan says it was attacking Baloch militants, members of a group called the BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army, BLA. Their goal is to create an independent Balochistan, basically to break away from Pakistan. Islamabad says they had credible intelligence. Apparently, the Baloch militants were planning something big. But let's not kid ourselves. This was a retaliatory strike. Iran bombed Pakistan, so Pakistan had to bomb Iran back. Their foreign ministry is now talking of de-escalation.
Acts like the one which took place a couple of nights ago create difficulties and give the adversaries of our friendship the pretext to create more difficulties in the region. We will continue to engage with our neighbor Iran to ensure that peace prevails and and that the two countries make concerted and coordinated efforts to combat the threat of terrorism.
What about Pakistan's army? They're on high alert right now, but the army statement did focus on dialogue and cooperation. So clearly Pakistan has had enough. They've made their point. What about Iran? Well, Tehran has summoned Pakistan's top diplomat in the country. They've also condemned the strikes. As for casualties, 9 people were killed. Iran says all of them were foreign nationals. So should we assume that this conflict is over? Seems like it for now. But 2 worries still remain. One, no one knows for sure why Iran attacked Pakistan in the first place. On paper, it was about anti-terrorism, but strategically, it made little sense. Maybe Iran has more targets in mind. Maybe Tuesday's attack was just the start. The fact is, we don't know. Now to the second worry. What if Pakistan's attack pushes Iran over the top? Just think about it. The US has never struck inside Iran's borders. Neither has Israel, and these are sworn enemies of Iran. But Pakistan has crossed that red line. So Tehran may feel the pressure to respond to show who's the boss, which means the danger is not over yet. The next couple of days will be crucial. Pakistan's top officials are all returning to the country. The caretaker prime minister is coming back from Davos. The foreign minister is returning from Uganda. So it's all hands on deck. And this whole saga has split the world. The United States has condemned Iran's airstrike, or had condemned that airstrike. Let's see if they condemn Pakistan's as well. Meanwhile, China is spooked. They have a lot at stake in both these countries. Iran and Pakistan are key partners of Beijing. So China says, we can mediate.
The Chinese side sincerely hopes that the two sides can exercise calm and restraint and avoid an escalation of tension. We're also willing to play a constructive role in de-escalating the situation if both sides need it.
So we do condemn those strikes. We've seen Iran violate the sovereign borders of 3 of its neighbors in just the past couple days. And I will say that the difference is the context very much matters.
What about India? No prizes for guessing? New Delhi is supporting Iran. Listen to the government's reaction. And I'm quoting, "We have an uncompromising position of zero tolerance towards terrorism. We understand actions that countries take in their self-defense." So India doesn't mind the attacks. But what if things escalate? What will prolonged aggression between Iran and Pakistan look like? First, some numbers. Pakistan has more than 650,000 military personnel. And Iran? Around 610,000. Pakistan's defense budget is around $6 billion. Iran's is much higher, closer to $10 billion. Pakistan has around 1,400 aircraft, out of which 387 are fighter jets. Iran's fleet is smaller. Around 550 aircraft in total, which includes 186 fighter jets. What about tanks? Again, Pakistan holds the edge. They have more than 3,700 tanks against Iran's 2,000. The naval fleet is evenly matched. Pakistan has 114 vessels. Iran has 101. Both sides also have trump cards. Iran's economy is in much better shape. Pakistan's economy is in the dumps. But then again, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. So my point is quite simple. A prolonged aggression would be ugly and costly. Not to mention, totally unnecessary. There is no strategic requirement here, because both sides agree that the border areas are problematic. Both sides think it's lawless and chaotic. So these attacks do not really improve the situation. At best, it's a battle of egos. Plus, the regional impact would be huge. More countries will pick sides. Some will be caught in the middle. And of course, non-state actors would benefit. It's a risky prospect for India. Pakistan's army lives in forever suspicion of India. If they get tied down in the West, they will want deterrence against India. And what form will that take? It's impossible to know, but it's safe to assume that it won't look good. So de-escalation is the need of the hour. Both sides have struck each other. The scoreboard reads 1-1. Anything more is self-destructive. So Iran struck Pakistan yesterday. Islamabad retaliated today. Iraq and Syria have suffered airstrikes, and Israel has opened a new front in Lebanon. They're going after the Hezbollah. It is the perfect storm. And to add to the misery, ships passing through the Red Sea are still unsafe. Today, India responded to a distress call from the Gulf of Aden. A cargo ship had come under attack, the MV Genco Picardy. It was attacked by drones. There were no casualties, but the ship was damaged. There were 22 crew members on board, including 9 Indians. An Indian warship was in the vicinity, the INS Vishakhapatnam. It's a guided missile destroyer. It intercepted the cargo ship. Indian officers boarded the vessel. They inspected the damage. It was not significant. So when they deemed it safe, they asked the vessel to continue its journey. And this is becoming a recurring theme because the region remains volatile, unsafe for ships, despite a large military presence. India alone has a sizable deployment in this region, some 10 to 12 warships operating in the Arabian Sea, along with patrol aircraft, predator drones, and Dornier aircraft for surveillance. And they may need to stay there longer because of America's actions. The US is going after the Houthis. They have conducted fresh airstrikes, their fourth round of airstrikes in 1 week. This time, the Americans targeted the missile launchers. The Houthis were preparing for fresh attacks. They had loaded missiles onto the launchers. America got whiff of it. It identified multiple launch sites, and then the US Navy struck them. A total of 14 missiles were destroyed. One of the locations they hit was Dhamar. The attack was captured on camera.
أمريكا صح؟
من اللي يضرب؟
ايش هناك معسكر ولا ايش؟
أيوة مدرسة الحرس الشرطة العسكرية هناك أمر القرن.
So the strikes were targeted, and the Americans are clearly going after the Houthis, using every tool at their disposal, including diplomatic ones. They have redesignated Houthis as global terrorists. In 2021, less than a month after he took office, Joe Biden had given Houthis some relief. He had lifted the global terrorist designation. It was imposed by Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, when he was president. Now, 3 years later, it's back to square one. President Biden has reversed his decision, and he's declared the Houthis terrorists again.
We took this action because of their continued reckless and indiscriminate attacks on ships transiting the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. These attacks are a clear example of terrorism, violation of international law.
But this is not just about accountability. The US wants to corner the Houthis. This designation targets their finances. It freezes Houthi assets in the US. It restricts flow of funds from abroad, including from global markets. Basically, it's a form of a sanction to get the Houthis to stop attacking ships. But will they stop? Will this American sanction do the trick? It's unlikely. The Houthis may not have US bank accounts or blue chip investments in NASDAQ. So these labels can lead to only one result: more animosity.
The Yemeni armed forces emphasizes that the response to the American and British offenses is inevitably coming, and any new offense will not remain without a response and punishment.
America's decision may have unintended consequences. The Houthis are de facto rulers of Yemen. They control large parts of the country, including the capital, Sana'a. And Yemen faces the world's worst humanitarian crisis. This country is on its knees. 80% of Yemen, 80% does not have food or water. Over 75% needs aid to survive. 3 million people are homeless, and Yemen's currency, the rial, is worthless. Food distribution is already suspended in the country, and this conflict could trigger fresh chaos. 8 groups are raising an alarm. 26 of them have issued a joint statement. They're worried about the latest escalation and America's countermeasures. They fear the US might end up punishing Yemenis for the acts of Houthis. The people of Yemen are already angry. They accuse the US of blackmail.
The US takes these decisions to blackmail people and to hold this against them, using the decision like a sword against anyone who stands against American and Israeli interests.
So the situation is delicate, and America's approach might make it worse. Instead of ending a conflict, the US may end up intensifying it, which is hardly surprising. The US has a long history of this, of fraught military interventions. We all know what happened in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Will Yemen be next? This crisis is like a gas leak, and America has shown up with a matchstick. There is every chance this will backfire, and we hope we are wrong. Now let's talk about China. This week, Beijing launched a charm offensive. Their premier was dispatched to Davos with a delegation of 140 people, including 10 state ministers. Their mission? To woo the biggest business groups in the world. Davos is a mountain resort in Switzerland. Every year it hosts the World Economic Forum, where world leaders, top economic minds and policymakers, and the rich and powerful gather. They exchange their thoughts on the world economy and debate some of the biggest challenges facing the world. So this event is like speed dating, but for the global economy. And China wants to court all kinds of suitors. The Chinese premier has been busy. He began his engagement at Davos with a speech. Li Qiang had a simple message to deliver: China is open for business.
China will adhere to the fundamental national policy of opening up to the outside world, and the door of opening up will only open wider and wider.
Well, after the speech came the handshakes. Li met top business leaders, including the CEOs of top banking institutions, the likes of JP Morgan, Bank of America, Standard Chartered, and Blackstone. The Chinese premier had lunch with them. Same with the politicians. Li's most significant sit-down was with Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. The two leaders spoke about trade, among other things. Now, this is quite a shift. Since the pandemic, Chinese leaders have been largely evasive, especially their president, Xi Jinping. He has missed several important events last year, including the G20 summit in India. In fact, he still does not travel very much. But his team is now coming out in full force, and in that sense, Davos signals a shift. China is trying to achieve two objectives here. The first one is related to their economy. They're trying to build a new narrative, one that is less negative and more positive. Because today the Chinese economy is seen as weak, unstable, and in a state of decline. At Davos, Premier Li gave a different message. He claimed that China's economy did better than expectations last year.
Our expected GDP growth is around 5.2%, which is higher than the target of around 5% set at the beginning of last year.
A growth of 5.2% against a target of 5%. We're hearing this number for the first time. Naturally, it is being received with skepticism. Economists are questioning this data, which hardly comes as a surprise because data is not China's strong suit. But none of this has stopped Beijing from hammering its claims. The Chinese are determined to show that their economy has not stagnated. That's their first objective. The second is about fixing the larger sentiment. Investors do not trust China anymore. Until last year, foreign companies had pulled some $160 billion out of China. At Davos, Premier Li tried to pull some of this money back.
We will also listen to the views of foreign businesses regularly. We will actively promote solutions as long as they are reasonable demands.
We hear you. That's what Li tried to tell foreign businesses. And this is a massive PR exercise to fix China's image. But this pitch has few takers. The first reactions to Li's speech are negative. Experts say his remarks are broad and unspecific. He's making wide-ranging promises, but not sharing any details. Like, how will China address the concerns of investors? What steps will it take? Li's public statements do not answer these questions, and the US is adding insult to injury with a resounding endorsement of India yesterday. It came from US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He hailed India's growth story at Davos.
We see an extraordinary success story, and we see the remarkable achievements that Prime Minister Modi has, a relationship between our countries that is in a new place, at a new level.
Blinken's words reflect the broader sentiment. World leaders believe in India's growth story. China may have more resources and manpower to promote its agenda, but the world can see through its propaganda. In Bangladesh, a new campaign is brewing. New for Bangladesh, but not really for the neighborhood. It's India out. The trend began in the Maldives, but some in Bangladesh are now buying in, specifically the opposition, the BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. BNP. They ruled the country for a long time. But in 2009, they lost power, and since then, it's been a downward spiral. The BNP boycotted elections in 2014, and in 2019, they won just 5 seats. So this is a party in crisis. Could that explain the BNP's new strategy? Reports say the plan was created by Tariq Rahman. He's the acting chairman of the BNP, also the eldest son of Ziaur Rahman and Khalida Zia. General Zia was the dictator who founded the BNP, this party. And Khalida Zia is a former prime minister. So Tariq Rahman is political royalty. But he doesn't live in Bangladesh. He lives in London in exile. And from there, he's reportedly coordinating this campaign. It's mostly playing out on social media. Take a look at this post, for instance. The account has more than 50,000 followers. It says, boycott Indian products. Other accounts have joined in. They're using the hashtag India out. They say India is destroying Bangladesh. Just a couple of problems, though. A, India doesn't meddle in other countries. New Delhi did not appoint Sheikh Hasina as Prime Minister. The people of Bangladesh did. And B, destroyed what exactly? Bangladesh has prospered in the last decade. It is set to become a developing nation in 2026, meaning it will be in the same category as China and India. So the campaign itself is confusing. But it's on point for the BNP. Under their rule, Bangladesh was closer to Pakistan. The society was radicalized and anti-India sentiments grew. Sheikh Hasina corrected all this. She has inherited the vision of her father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh too. He was convinced that Dhaka's future was linked to New Delhi's. And Sheikh Hasina thinks the same. But does everyone in her party agree? And I'll tell you why I asked this question. The new Bangladesh cabinet has raised some eyebrows. Some pro-India names are missing, like Abdul Momen. He served as foreign minister from 2019 to 2023, but now he's been replaced. And Momen was a good friend of India. He defended New Delhi during multiple crises. Listen in.
But as I understand that they tried to make jokes of the Honorable Prime Minister of India. This is not acceptable.
Are you condemning it?
Of course we do. We believe, we are very proud of India because they don't do immature things. We have a very solid relationship with India. It is because of the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, Narendra Modi, there is an agreement for the declaration.
Another example is Abdul Razak. He was Bangladesh's Minister for Agriculture, again a good friend of India. This time, he's been dropped from the cabinet. At the same time, some new faces are in, like Salman Fazlur Rahman. He's an advisor to Sheikh Hasina. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi calls him a childhood friend. Should New Delhi read into these changes? Not too much, we'd say. Sheikh Hasina dropped 16 sitting ministers, so she wanted a reset anyway. As for the new foreign minister, India can get a pulse soon. He is slated to visit New Delhi next month. That should give us a better idea. And finally, what about India out? Frankly, it looks like a desperate political strategy because Bangladesh is not the Maldives. It's a country of 170 million people, so big neighbors won't intimidate them. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is breathing a sigh of relief. He won a minor political victory last night after surviving a major rebellion within his party. Yesterday, Britain's lower house of parliament passed a law, the Rwanda Bill. It cleared its third reading in the House of Commons, meaning it has cleared stage 1. There are more to go, like the upper house of parliament.
The House of Commons has spoken, the Conservative Party has come together, the Rwanda Bill has passed. It's now time for the Lords to pass this bill too. This is an urgent national priority.
That was today's speech. Prime Minister Sunak makes it seem that only the House of Lords stands in the way now, and with their assent, the Rwanda plan will become a reality. But that's not true. First, let's understand the issue. The UK has been dealing with high levels of illegal immigration. People often board boats in France and sail to the UK. They land on British shores and claim to be asylum seekers. They house for months while their asylum requests are processed. There are tens of thousands of such asylum seekers in the UK, and the country doesn't have centres to accommodate all of them. So they're often lodged in hotels or other makeshift accommodation, all on the taxpayer's dime. The UK government pays about £8 million a day for this, 8 million a day. And many in England are fed up. So the government came up with a radical plan. It wants to house asylum seekers somewhere else, in the African nation of Rwanda. They want to send them there. The plan is that Rwanda will process the refugee requests and eventually send only the eligible people back to the UK. So effectively, London wants to outsource the problem. But there's a hurdle. The plan is illegal under international human rights law and under the British law. So Prime Minister Sunak's party has been struggling. They've tried everything to launch this Rwanda plan, almost literally everything. In 2022, they had a flight ready, but the European Court of Human Rights told them to stop. Last year, the law went to the British Supreme Court. Again, it was ruled illegal. The court said people sent to Rwanda would be at risk of refoulement, meaning genuine asylum seekers may be sent back to their home countries, back to face the danger that they escaped from. And that was illegal. That's what the British Supreme Court said. Which brings us to yesterday's bill. The Safety of Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill. That's what it's called. It is to legally designate Rwanda as a safe country so that the British Supreme Court cannot complain if people are sent there. And the bill has passed through the House of Commons.
The ayes to the right, 320. The noes to the left, 276. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Look!
This was Sunak's victory yesterday, but there are more challenges ahead. The House of Lords will have to pass the law. They cannot reject it, but they do have the power to delay it and to make amendments. And Sunak's party is not in the majority in the upper house, so the bill will face resistance there. The next challenge would be human rights laws, British and international. And if by some miracle it clears all of this, the challenges to deportation will begin. All the people being deported to Rwanda will make appeals. That's hundreds of thousands of cases in British courts. The process will be long and painful. Even Sunak's own officials think the chances of deporting anyone are slim. Government lawyers say there's a 50-50 chance before the next election. Which is why I said Sunak won a minor victory last night. What he did manage, though, was to survive a major rebellion. He was pitted against his own MPs, about 60 of them, 6-0. Wanted to amend the bill. They wanted to make it tougher. But Rishi Sunak refused. He said a tougher bill would definitely run afoul of international law. Eventually, only 11 of the 60 rebels voted against the bill, the hardliners, like old Home Secretary Suella Braverman. The rest of the rebels fell in line. And Sunak projected a united Conservative party, securing his grip on it till the next election at least. Now let's turn our attention to Southeast Asia. A corruption scandal has come up in the most unlikely of places, Singapore, a country known for its corruption-free image. But this reputation is being tested. A minister has been charged with corruption. His name is Subramaniam Iswaran. Up until today, he was Singapore's transport minister, but he has resigned because of the scandal. He maintains his innocence, but he has still stepped down to mitigate the embarrassment to the ruling party. And here's why it's a big deal. Singapore has not seen such a high-profile graft scandal since the 1980s. And the world is watching it closely to see how Singapore's ruling party behaves and whether they can still maintain their integrity after this. Here's our report.
A corruption scandal has hit Singapore, something that it takes extremely seriously. The graft case involves this man, Subramaniam Iswaran, or S. Iswaran as he's more commonly known. Up until a few hours ago, he was Singapore's transport minister. He was also serving as the minister in charge of trade relations. But he has stepped down from both positions and resigned as an MP as well, and as a member of the ruling People's Action Party. Iswaran says that he will now focus on clearing his name, but that won't be an easy task. The former minister faces a slew of corruption charges, 27 to be exact. He's accused of obtaining goods and favors worth about 384,000 Singapore dollars or 285,000 USD. This is between 2015 and 2022. The gifts include tickets to plays or musicals in the UK, tickets to football matches, a private plane ride, business class tickets and free hotel stays, and also tickets to the Singapore Grand Prix. They alone were worth 350,000 Singapore dollars or 260,000 USD. Iswaran allegedly received all these gifts from one person. Ong Beng Seng. He's a Malaysian billionaire, a hotel tycoon, and the person responsible for bringing Formula One to Singapore. Iswaran is accused of taking these gifts and also using his influence to advance Ong's business interests. The billionaire was promoting the sport. He needed help from the Singapore Tourism Board. Iswaran was Minister for Trade between 2015 and 2018. The minister also served as chairman and then advisor for Singapore's F1 steering committee. But even if the F1 angle didn't exist, Iswaran taking the gifts would still run afoul of Singapore's graft laws. Any civil servant is prohibited from taking gifts worth more than 50 Singapore dollars. They are supposed to give anything more valuable than that to the government. If the civil servants want to keep a gift more expensive than 50 Singapore dollars, they need to pay the full cost to the government. These limits apply to politicians as well. No one is allowed to accept valuable gifts of any kind. Singapore is clear on that. The island is famous for its tough stance on graft. It pays its politicians and civil servants well, so that they aren't tempted to engage in corruption. Iswaran's salary was over 40,000 USD per month, and he also had an MP allowance of about $12,000 a month. But it didn't seem to prevent Iswaran from allegedly taking the gifts from the Malaysian billionaire. Iswaran has proclaimed his innocence. He plans to fight the charges, but he still resigned from his posts. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has accepted his resignation. This is the official statement. Look at that last line. Singaporeans expect no less. That's why Iswaran resigned. The people of the island demand incorruptibility and expect their leaders to walk the talk.
This week was a nightmare for Indian aviation. Temperatures dropped across northern India. Most airports were engulfed by fog, so flights got delayed. Reports say hundreds of them. It led to some pretty bizarre incidents, like passengers punching pilots and travelers eating dinner on the tarmac. Not a good look. It was a reality check for Indian aviation. But it's not the full story. Let me show you some numbers. India had just 74 airports 10 years ago. Today, that number is 148. The plan is to have 220 airports by the end of 2030. Also, more Indians are flying today. In 2023, air traffic hit an all-time high. India logged around 153 million domestic passengers. That's around 2,900 flights per day. It's much higher than pre-COVID levels. Estimates say 2024 will be even better. Now compare this to the last decade. In 2010, India's air traffic was much lower, just around 51 million domestic passengers. So things have improved. And why is that? Well, one reason is access. If more cities have airports, more people will fly. But that alone is not enough. People should be able to afford flights, which is reason number two. India's middle class has grown consistently. It will make up 38% of the population by 2031 and 60% of the population by 2047. Airlines have seen this potential. Indian carriers placed massive orders last year. Guess how many planes they're buying? Almost 1,000. Air India has ordered 470 planes. Indigo has ordered 500. So clearly they see potential. But what is the end game? Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid out a vision in 2017. Listen to this.
जो सामान्य व्यक्ति हवाई चप्पल पहन करके घूमता है, वो मुझे हवाई जहाज में दिखना चाहिए. ये मेरा सपना.
In simple words, everyone should be able to fly, not just the rich Indians. How close are we to that target? Today, only 3% of India's population flies regularly. Only 3%. That's 42 million people. Compare that to the US. Around 145 million Americans fly regularly. Around 300 million have flown at least once. So how do we get there? There will be organic growth. As income increases, more people will fly. That's a long-term change. But there are other factors too. For example, what if flight rates were cheaper? Would more people fly then? The logical answer is yes. But for cheaper flights, you need competition. You need a crowded field. Just look at China. Around 43 scheduled airlines operate in China. In India, this number is just 17. Same with daily flights. Around 13,000 flights take off every day in China. In India, it's less than 3,000. Clearly, that needs to change. If more players enter the market, prices will drop. That is the main challenge. Because right now, it's like duopoly. Indigo makes up 60% of the market share. Tata's carriers make up 26%. So two firms control 86% of India's market. Naturally, prices will be high. And you can't blame them either because Indian carriers are running huge losses. In the last financial year, their losses were around 17,000 crore rupees. This year, it will be around 4,000 crore rupees. So the trajectory is good. But unless the business is profitable, more firms will not join. Of course, all this will take time. It requires the government and the private sector to work together. Just one word of advice, though. Do not cut corners. Airports across Asia have become the gold standard. They're attractions in themselves, and India needs to keep up with technology, with innovation, and with more investments. Just look at the new Bengaluru airport terminal. It is designed like a garden. Outside India, people are already talking about it. Same with regulation. It's important to keep a close watch on airports to make sure that rules are not flouted. I mentioned the tarmac dinner at the start. The government has issued fines for it. Indigo has been asked to pay 1.2 crore rupees. The Mumbai airport is paying 60 lakh rupees. It may not sound like a lot, but remember these firms are already running in losses. So every penny counts. So to recap, India's aviation sector is primed for takeoff. It has grown leaps and bounds in the last few decades. Only two challenges remain: making it accessible to the masses and making it profitable. Cancer. It's the six-letter word that can scare even the bravest. Cancer has plagued humankind for centuries. The Egyptians mentioned it, the Greeks named it, and US President Richard Nixon declared a war on it. It kills 10 million people every year. Yet, we have no cure. All we have is chemotherapy, and even that is toxic. It leaves you weak and tired. Now, a new drug has raised hope. It's called blinatumomab, or just Blina. It's an immunotherapy drug. What makes it better is that it is less toxic, less invasive, and you can take it at home. But will this be the elusive cure to cancer? Our next report tells you.
Humankind has made all sorts of advances. There's space travel, there's artificial intelligence, there's talking robots. But if there's one thing we haven't found yet, it's a cure for cancer. A new drug has sparked hope, but will it be any better? It is a $1 trillion question, because cancer costs the world $1.9 trillion every year. This is a disease that has haunted humankind for centuries. It was first described by ancient Egyptians. The first mention is in the Edwin Smith Papyrus, so that's dating back to 1600 BC. The document mentions breast tumors being removed, but it says there is no cure. Then we have Hippocrates, the father of medicine. He is believed to have given cancer its name. It came from the word karkinos. Basically, it means crabs. According to him, the tumors looked crab-like. So that's how it got its name. But what exactly is cancer? Cancer is not a single disease. In fact, it's an umbrella of diseases, over 200 of them. It can start in any part of the body. It happens when there are changes in a group of normal cells. This leads to uncontrolled growth. It's abnormal and forms a lump known as a tumor. This is true for all cancers except leukemia, which is blood cancer. So cancer is varied. It's different for every person, which is why it's so hard to find a cure. And that makes it deadly. Cancer is the second leading cause of death globally. 10 million people die every year from cancer, and more than half of all cancer cases are preventable. So what are we doing? Well, humankind has poured billions into cancer research. The 1940s gave us chemotherapy. It's the use of toxic chemicals to kill cancer cells, but it often leaves patients weak. Yet, 80 years later, chemo is still the first choice to treat cancer. Now, a new drug has sparked excitement. It's called blinatumomab. It's an immunotherapy drug. It is said to be less toxic than chemotherapy. Basically, what it does is to look for cancer cells. That way, the body can recognize them and then destroy them. It's already licensed for adults to use, and now it's being used for kids in trials. So how is it different? Blina is more promising because unlike chemo, it isn't painful. It comes in a liquid bag and is administered through the vein. And more importantly, it can be given at home, which means patients won't even have to go to the hospital. Now, Blina has shown success, but it isn't 100% foolproof. Which brings us back to the question, why do we still not have a cure? Chemo came in the 1940s. US President Richard Nixon declared a war on cancer in 1971. Since then, there have been trials, research, billions of dollars have been spent, yet no one cure is available. Of course, we have more options. There's cancer vaccines, immunotherapy drugs, but the problem remains the same. How do you treat cancer without killing normal cells? It was the big question back then, and it's still the big question now. Hopefully, we will find an answer soon.
Be comfortable in your own skin. This is powerful advice, also a tough ask, especially when we are referring to actual skin. Bad skin is a pain point for many. But thanks to the internet, it has turned into an obsession. Hours are lost before a mirror as it feels less mirrory and more magnifying glass. And you don't just stare, you tamper with the evidence. Whatever conclusion you reach, there is a cure, a quick trip to the store to buy some hope, bottled in cutesy packaging of creams and serums. If one product does not work, there are plenty more. And if none of them works, there's always a cosmetic procedure, like Botox. This is a minimally invasive procedure. It promises wrinkle-free skin and a youthful appearance. Initially, Botox was used for medical purposes. About 2 decades ago, it was approved for cosmetic use. Most of its recipients are middle-aged, but now more youngsters are seeking Botox the world over. It is the new norm in South Korea. In India, Botox has become a pre-wedding trend. In America, Botox use for people aged 19 or younger grew 75% between 2019 and 2022 and 71% for adults aged 20 to 29. Gen Z has given Botox a new twist. They're calling it baby Botox, which is horrifying on so many levels. Their wrinkles are not even defined yet. So youngsters are not aiming at fixing something. Their goal is avoidance. Gen Z is getting Botox out of the fear of aging, and in doing so, they're creating what they fear. Doctors say too much Botox can age you. It curbs the use of some muscles, their size decreases, and muscles waste away. Botox can also cause bruising, nausea, and headaches. But that's not the only price the young must pay. Botox is costly. The average going rate is $500, and an average Botox lasts about 3 months. So multiple treatments are required, and the costs line up. So Gen Z is throwing money at a problem that doesn't even exist. And they aren't the only ones. The focus on perfect skin has trickled down to Gen Alpha. They are the youngest generation, aged 13 or below, basically kids. One can find this new species hunting through cosmetic store aisles, clumsily testing products, building their own multi-step skincare routines with pricey products. Their favorites include products available at Sephora, so the internet has a term for this species. They're called Sephora Kids. Now, school is tough. Imagine a 17-step skincare routine on top of that. But that's not the only reason why this trend is worrisome. Tweens are spending thousands on products. And there's a good chance they won't work because the formulations are developed for older skin. Plus, children do not have a fully formed skin barrier, so these products could do more harm than good. But if this is shocking, know that there are skincare products for babies too. Apparently, treating perfectly normal baby acne is the need of the hour. It sounds bizarre, but who cares? We live in a culture that feeds addictive behavior. And social media is more than happy to oblige. Reddit has a group called Skincare Addiction. It has 2 million subscribers, up from 500,000 in 2018. Hashtag skincare routine has over 55 billion views on TikTok, 55 billion. Influencers resent acne and wrinkles, calling them scourges to be punished. They talk about a facial cream that stings, so they know it's working. They smile while ripping pore strips off their faces. And with this, big wigs of the beauty industry smile too, because skincare is the fastest growing market segment in the beauty industry. It is worth about $180 billion. The irony is, people want to find a product that works, while companies want to sell as many products as possible. And you can buy into this. Maybe you like the ritual element of 20-step routines. Maybe you want a new project. Maybe it's the performative self-soothing. But when your skincare routine starts sounding like cleanse, tone, obsess, do ask yourself this: what will it take to become comfortable in your own skin, quite literally? Eggs suspended in the air, chopsticks held up by noodles, and frozen mustaches. An Arctic blast has brought extreme weather to many countries: Canada, the United States, even parts of Europe. They're all dealing with record-breaking cold, which begs us to ask, why is it colder if the Earth is heating up? 2023 was the hottest year on record. 2024 is likely to be hotter. Shouldn't winters be warmer then? Our next report tells you why cold snaps could become the new normal.
Imagine this. You get out of bed, you feel hungry, you want some eggs and noodles for breakfast. So you go to the kitchen and crack some eggs, only for it to freeze mid-air. Then you cook the noodles, but you don't have to worry about a slurpy mess. The noodles can stand by themselves. They can even support the chopsticks. Sounds gravity-defying, right? Well, that's breakfast for you in Canada. The country is dealing with freezing temperatures, close to minus 45 degrees Celsius. It is being caused by a polar vortex. What's that? It's a swirling mass of cold air that hovers over the North Pole. Usually, it's like a spinning top. It rotates very fast, keeping cold air locked in the Arctic. But when it's disrupted, this air moves southwards. Right now, it's responsible for the extreme weather across Canada, the US, and Europe. Across America, temperatures are at an all-time low. Snow is covering everything. Vehicles are sliding on icy roads and turning over. Pool equipment is exploding. Football fans have to clear snow off their seats.
Absolutely.
And an NFL coach even had his mustache frozen over. Even the White House could not escape the cold blast. And it's not just the United States. The Arctic blast has gripped Europe too. The UK is bracing for sub-zero temperatures. Schools are closed. Travel is disrupted. And there is snow everywhere. In France, snow has led to disruptions. Highways are blocked. Roads have not cleared. And there's a white blanket as far as you can see. Germany too saw some snowfall, and it's led to major travel frustration. With flights delayed, trains cancelled. It's far from a winter wonderland. But the question on everyone's mind is this: why is it getting colder? If the Earth is getting warmer, climate change is the villain here too. 2023 was the hottest year on record. 2024 is likely to be warmer. The world is heating up. The result is extreme weather patterns, like this Arctic blast, for example. As temperatures rise in the North Pole, the likelihood of polar air moving southwards rises too, and that has caused this cold snap. So while winters could get warmer, cold extremes will still happen. And it is strange, it is so cold in Canada that things are freezing over. Meanwhile, in Greenland, glaciers are melting at record speed. They are losing 30 million tons of ice every hour. That's 20% more than what scientists previously thought. So the Earth is getting warmer. And it's also bringing with it this type of freak weather: hot summers, warmer winters, and snaps of extreme temperatures. All of this has just one warning. If we don't act fast enough, extreme weather could be the new normal. So if you like your eggs runny and not suspended in the air, don't ignore climate change.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Croatia, an artist turns thousands of matchsticks into works of art. The London Zoo welcomes the birth of critically endangered gorilla. And is there water on the red planet? Europe's Mars Express orbiter may have spotted a huge ice water deposit below the surface. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1919, the Versailles Peace Conference began in Paris. The goal was to discuss post-World War I peace. It led to the establishment of the League of Nations, the predecessor to the United Nations. Leaving you on that note, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.